Shabbat shalom. As I always say, it's always good to be here, and it's not the easiest thing I would say, but it's always a pleasure to share the words of Adonai. Parasha Nasso. So this is one of the parasha I've read that one is one of the longest single portion in the Torah. But what will come with it is it's lots of repetition. And when I read first time, I said, oh, that's the easiest way to make a parasha as long as it can be. Just keep repeating the same things. Which, first time I read, when I read it for the first time, it's, things start to sort of slot in and making sense. I mean, a brief summary of this parasha. It starts basically a continuation with counting census that we read last week. God tells Moshe to count the Levites from age of 30 to 50 because they are the ones who will be doing the service, transporting parts of the Messianic. And total, he managed to count 8,580 men. Quite lots of men. Clearly, lots of things to move around. As I mentioned, this parasha, when you first read, is very, very different to most of other Torah portion. It doesn't follow the normal pattern, the sort of the flow of most of Torah portion. Things are related. Everything is sort of block, fits together. On this parasha, every single top doesn't seem to flow perfectly. It doesn't sort of fit. It's all just, amalgamates together. It's just a mixture of lots of different subjects in one parasha. It starts with description of the family of Gershon and Merari. Now, when I mention repetition, when you go through the Gershon, family, what they've done and so on, is very, I'll say exactly very similar to the family of Merari did, or their responsibility was. And reading through, we end up with a sort of brief law explaining. To explaining what to do with uncleaning people and people with tazarat and everyone with discharge or whoever by accident or somehow end up touching a dead body, what to do with them. And further down, as we continue to read the parasha, what we come up with, again, is another sort of topic which clearly, I'm struggling here, not very related to the previous topic. And, sorry, I just need to, not very related to the previous topic, which is the woman who apparently or allegedly was suspected by her husband of adultery. Again, lots of explanation what happened, what did happen, and we have a different law of jealousy. And then it comes the law of Nasso, a person who voluntarily fixed a period of time on himself to sort of special, restrict himself to let's say, high-level holiness in that sense. And then follow up with renunciation of wine and grape products and haircuts and defilements and contact again with dead body. Now, as we read through this parasha, it's kind of without sort of connection. It's kind of things like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, that will do. But suddenly we stumble to one of the oldest prayers in Judaism, which is recited daily around the world. the Aaronic blessings. Again, out of nowhere, it's just kind of, well, you know what, Moshe, just tell them, that's what they need to do. They need to bless the people of Israel. And then further down, it comes the description of the gifts by leader of each tribe for the dedication of the Messianic. Again, we have a very long paragraphs, repeated, not one, not twice, not three, not 4 times, 12 times. Bear in mind, all the leaders, they brought literally the same thing. Let's say, roughly, the same thing. I mean, for nowadays, clearly, that wouldn't make TikTok or Instagram because it's too long. People, lose patience to read through the same thing over and over again. Let's say 12 times. But somehow the Torah found it on this portion very, let's say, important to repeat exactly the same thing 12 times. I suppose the easy thing will be, right, okay, 12 leaders, right, name them, and all of them, they brought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's it, done with it, and move on. I mean, based on this Torah portion, I suppose what I could have done is basically repeat everything I've just said 12 times, and that should be the talk for today. But clearly, there's more than what seems to be unrelated topics and just repetition. One of the questions out of many questions read through this parasha that came to my mind when I finished reading the Torah portion this week is, why does Torah spend so much time in events that could be summarized simply by naming the leaders of 12 tribes? And we know what, when you read the first one, the second one, the third one, you say, I know exactly what's going to happen, the fourth leader, and the fifth, and the sixth, and the seventh. But why? What is the importance of naming them all? Why the Torah spends that amount of time literally going through one by one, 12 times? And why is this Torah portion seems to be not very, out of pattern for most of the other portions? But reading through the parasha, things start to make sense when you read over and over and over again. And suddenly, I sort of stumble into, I stop, read maybe 3, 4, 5 times the chapter 6, verse 22 to 27. Because this is sort of very, very important prayer in the middle of lots of repetition and sort of things that doesn't really flow. Why there? Now, the very first version, chapter 6, verse 22, Moshe said to Adonai said to Moshe, speak to Aaron and his sons and tell them that this is how you are to bless the people of Israel. Now, when I read this, it led to another question. Why God needs a person or human being to bless the people of Israel? We all know God is the one who blesses humanity and his people. He does not need a middleman. And when you read through the end, it's kind of clear. Let them put my name on Israelites, and I, Adonai, will bless them. So then we sort of realize, the blessing does not come from the priests, but from God, Adonai himself. So why do we require the priest to put his name on the people of Israel? Again, it's kind of everything you read just needs to, feels like answer question, but actually raise another question. Why do we need the priests on that sense? Now, when you look through again, the entire portion and, the portions before, why there was the needs for priests there. I mean, I suppose it's kind of back to reality, human being, how do we tend to react to better to things that we see, to things that we do with our own hands, things that we can touch, we can easily, instantly believe and without any effort. And the same thing, there's lots of things in life that, lots of blessing that God's, give to us. But we, human beings, sometimes we struggle to relate to things that we cannot see. And hence, sometimes they start sort that things happen just, by accident, because you're lucky. It's not about it. Because, and just on the self, like there is a conversation I read that, there is this guy, he was very good playing musical instruments, and he won lots of awards. And everyone said, oh, you are very lucky. Every competition you go, you win. And he said, well, you know what? I tend to be lucky and luckier. The more I practice, I just get lucky and luckier. That's why I win it. But that's what we don't see is what happened on the background. He was practicing, let's say, 10, 20 hours. And when he goes to the competition, of course, he won all the time. But not because he was lucky. It was because he was practicing. And perhaps that was his call. You practice, you move forwards. And back to the portion. Why the priests? Because I mean, the priests themselves, they were seen as a role models for the community, and that's through them that God's blessing flowed to the people, to the Israelites. And God, because He loved us, He basically asked or commanded the priest to bless His people. And it is one of the priests' calls was basically to unite the people, to bring them closer to Torah, because they display the qualities that God expects from a holy priest or priesthood. And every single person in the community will see them as a role model. And it's, as I mentioned, it's easier to relate to things that we see. It's easier to see, to have, to follow a role model, rather just, this is what the Torah said, that's what we should do. But you don't see anyone do it in a sort of perfection way. But when you have that role model, things makes much easier to relate to it. And there is, again, we mentioned on God's love to us. It's something that was set from the start of the creation. We are here today because He loved us. The whole universe, the existence of the whole universe is all based on God's love. And what seems to be a related subject and repetition, it starts to sort of, give that. We start seeing a clarity. There's a reason behind every single thing, although it doesn't seem related or doesn't flow as our mind would expect, but there is a rationale behind it. And when you continue to read on chapter 6:26, again, there's more answers thrown into the lots of questions that went through my mind. The unrelated subject, repetition, and so on. I stop at the last sentence of Aaronic blessing. Adonai, lift up His face towards you and give you peace. This clearly got me thinking. Because when you think about peace, what comes to mind is what peace? What's peace? If there's no war, absence of war is peace. And if there's no fight, there's no friction, that is peace. But peace, shalom, doesn't mean simplistically absence of war. It means completeness, where complexing systems integrate diversity, work in harmony, and everything is in its correct place and balance, because otherwise we cannot have peace. This parasha tells us to have peace, everything must be organized or have a structure how things can be reorganized. And when you look through what I mentioned, seems to be related. This parasha deals with unclean people, what to do with them, remove them from the camp, what to do if there's a suspicion or allegation of adultery, what to do with it, what to do if you vote to commit to a higher holiness. I mean, there's so much things packed into this portion. When you start to unpack it, it starts to make sense. And to have shalom, our minds must be free of worries, free of pain, free of jealousy, free of hatred. And the list goes on. Because all these things consume your peace and eventually will affect everything around you. God's shalom means shalom. And for this to happen, that harmony and balance must be in place. And this is the concept of peace that heavily we can see a parallel from the book of Genesis, the very first chapter, where God brings order from a chaos, a void, an emptiness, and everything starts to, you have the water where it should be, you have the stars where it should be, the moon, the separations, oceans and lakes, and that's that clear balance that brings this universe perfect for human life. Because anything unbalanced, as we can see the climate change now, anything that is unbalanced certainly has lots of consequences. And peace exists where each element on its system is valued and is vital part of the system as a whole. And where there is a friction between them, there's is fairly, I'll say, impossible to have that peace. And on this parasha, we talk about lots of aspects that we need to have to have a shalom. And when you go back to the beginning of this parasha, the parasha related to the family of Gershon and Merari. In the beginning, the parasha sings that they were given a role of honor, transporting the parts of tabernacle through the journey's trip in the wilderness. Now, what we haven't seen is any complaint from them. They have a specific task, a very clear task what they need to do, and they were chosen best for that specific tasks. And there was no complaints that we could read through this parasha. Feels like they were satisfied, and we'd been honored to do this service for Adonai. Unlike to what we read in few Torah portions a few weeks ago, Korach, the rebellion against Moshe and Aaron. Now, when we look at repetition of the leaders of each tribe's offering, we could see it is a way of indication that each of the leader of each tribe was considered important. And I suppose I could go so far to say important enough to merit its own passage in the Torah. Because one of the things that tends to happen, whether it's at work, communities, and so on, people tend to build negativity attitudes where they start internally, then, it start coming through externally, and everyone notice that. People tend to bring all that negative things and attitude when they feel slighted and not given their true role and recognition. And it is happening everywhere. It's at work, is with friends, is in communities. And we've seen this, happen, over and over again in the Torah. And by giving the leaders of each tribe their share of honor and attention, the Torah is telling us how important it is to preserve that harmony, that balance between not just people, but things that make the whole system work as one. And the narrative on this parasha is to make that special effort, because all these things doesn't happen by accident. As I mentioned, the guy that seems to be very lucky, winning all awards he take part of, but it's the behind the scenes, it's the practice, and everything to work in harmony, balanced, needs to have a special effort to preserve and restore the peace. Because peace is one of those things that easily can be damaged. Is a single word that you can literally damage a century years of that sort of trust and confidence on either person or a particular thing. But it's hard to recover that trust, because once that trust is lost, it is very difficult to repair. And we see this happen time and time again in Israelites' journey through the wilderness. The rebellion, the things they have done that Adonai was not expecting, and all those things that is so unbalanced, and the outcome of it, we've seen it time and time again. And again, it is, as I mentioned, is things doesn't happen by accident. It's the extra works, that special efforts, go the extra mile to bring peace, whether it's between husband and wife, as we read on this Torah portion, between leaders in the community, and between the people in the community. And one of the things we know is the fact that when we looked at most of prayers in Judaism, most of them has one thing in common, very, very, very in common, is the fact that most of our prayers end in peace, shalom. And perhaps this is not a constant, it's what this parasha has in parallel is lots of different topics or practical lessons on how to ensure, as far as possible, that everyone feels recognized, respected, and all those suspicions and are dealt with and resolved. And the same link is what we read today on Messianic writings. When the woman was brought to Yeshua, and a simple way, and it's a very practical example. Let those without sin throw the first stone. I think that Yeshua is, on this verse has taught us a very important lesson, because sometimes it's important to take one step back and reflect, rather just jump and throw the first stone. Because once he said that, what happened? Everyone disappeared. And this is again, from the very key elements, I think, in Judaism. And when you read through all the parasha, there are lots of things that, it's gone wrong. But one thing the Torah gives us is, in one hand, there's no expectation that any Jewish person should be perfect or live a perfect life. But the Torah is very realistic, and it states explicitly and repeatedly that we are expected to mess up, to mess things up, because we are not perfect. But, on the other hand, it provides a very, very clear instruction for what to do when we make mistakes. And as we read today, imagine you are in a camp. You need to be removed from the camp. How do you feel? But this is one of the instructions that's been given. That's how you resolve that issue. Yes, people will do what this will happen. That is how you deal with it. And that is the Torah. We are imperfect. We will make mistakes. We'll mess things up. But, on the other hand, we have a clear guideline, clear instruction of what to do in order to resolve or deal with all these issues. We have to work for peace as well. Let's pray for it. Because doing so, it strengthens our ties to one another and helps to ensure the presence of God amongst us. And so I'll come to the end of my talk, is what seemed to be repetition and things not sort of how perhaps expected, how I expected, based on previous parasha, how things flow and everything connected, interconnected, and all linked up. Every single word in Torah is there for a reason and has, there's sense on every single sentence, where there's repetition 1, 2, 3, 12 times. There's a reason behind it. And overall, Judaism is about repetition. Because every time, I'm sure we went through, this Torah portion for some people 20, 30, 40 times. But every time there's one thing new we learn from it. Every time we repeat what is a prayer, what is a portion in the Torah, there's always one thing new we learn from it. Because one of the things I was reading the Haftorah is, for modern society, we think, for mothers, if you are pregnant or you have kids, you know that. You go to hospital, you do your checks, the first thing the doctor will ask you, you don't drink wine, don't drink this, don't do that, don't do that. Now, on our eyes, it's kind of modern medicine, but no, when you read it, when you read the Bible, it's been there for years and years and years, thousands of years, way before, the NHS. And it's just that make that conclusion that, everything there is for a reason. Just to conclude, I'll leave you with a quote that made me laugh, actually. Among us, all the repetition. It says, if you look at a group of people that had faith, it certainly got to be Jews. They followed Moshe through the desert for 40 years with no map. Can you imagine that? There had to be someone at the back, like, I don't know, I don't think he knows where he's going. But the truth is, when you have Adonai, when you have Yeshua, who does need a map? Shabbat Shalom.
I think we need to build a screen or something into the lectern here that we can plug things into. That might work just as well. I think the creativity prize goes to Antonio this week for being the first one, I think, in the synagogue to have linked the Aaronic blessing with climate change. I thought that was really good. So the award goes to you for the most creative thinking of the week. But it is so true, isn't it, that it is so much focused on that restoration of shalom in everything, and that's lovely to hear. Thank you for bringing that to us today. We conclude our service this morning. We're going to remind ourselves again as we do the Aleinu of the narrative in all of this. Yes, there is a shalom coming. The shalom is the restoration of what was lost at the beginning. That's where we're all headed over time. Whether we have to be raised from the dead or whether we will see it in person, ultimately we will all see that restoration of all things at the end of all time, and all things will be one.